Welcome to Alberta Impact, Future of Health. I'm your host, Bryce Lambert. Joining me today is Jason Pincock, CEO of DynaLIFE, David Chang, CEO of Metabolomic Technologies, and Colin Corris, CCO of Nanostics, here to tell us about a revolutionary accelerator program to help get medical innovation through the final steps required to get life-changing technologies into the healthcare system. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely, good stuff. So, Jason, I'll start with you because I want to get right into the meat and potatoes of this here. Can you kind of give us a Cole's notes of what this accelerator program is and how it came to be?
So I think it's important to start with DynaLIFE is a real-world lab service provider. Right. So what we do every day is deliver millions of results to patients all across the health system in the lab world. And so often we kept running into young startup companies that would come to us and pitch about why we should try their diagnostic or why we should use their new tool. And the challenge we found is that as ready as they always thought they were just nowhere ready for the real world yet. And when we started having the real world conversations, what we realized is that there was a significant gap in our system between the academic world and the actual market. And we looked at how do we help fill that gap as an organization? How do we make sure that the technologies that we're developing out of our institutions and the great research that we're doing actually lands here instead of it simply being picked up as intellectual property under license, created somewhere else in the world, made real somewhere else in the world, and a decade later we buy it back into our public health system. And so it was, can we create an opportunity to create that bridge here, both for the health of Albertans, but also potentially to create the wealth for Albertans in terms of economic development.
Fantastic. And I love that portion of just making it stay here, keeping the brain power here, and you guys have the labs. And so tell us some of the advantages of becoming a member with this accelerator program.
Well, when we first envisioned it, we didn't really know how best to help people like Colin and David. But what we had, to be honest with you, it came from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's probably the best analogy that I have, which was, what if we created a golden ticket program and that golden ticket gave you an all-access pass to that magical factory that no one ever gets to go into.
Right.
And so what we did is we ran a competition to look at who had novel technologies that they felt were almost ready for market, that would benefit Albertans, that would fit well into our health system. And we looked at, okay, well, what if we invited them in? What if we carved out a space in the center of our lab? And what if we just gave them an all-access pass and said, how can we help you? Mm-hmm. And that's really where it came from. So, we don't own any part of any of the organizations. Our goal is to help them cross the finish line, and in helping them cross the finish line, can we take their technology right out of that research lab that's in our environment, move it right into production, and make it available to Albertans?
Gotcha. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between the academic research lab to the real world. So, Colin, you and I were talking a little bit about how that world is different when taking it from academic into the real world scenario. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a background on what that journey was like for you guys and how this kind of program, this accelerator program, alleviates some of the stresses and assisted you with getting to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start off with reminding people that at Nanostics we've developed a new prostate cancer diagnostic test. Mm-hmm. We've been working on the platform in this test for the last 7 or 8 years. 5 or 6 years of that was in the academic setting, and we collected and we had about 400 patients. And we showed that we had really good accuracy with our test. And this was all done in an academic setting, which we would consider a very rigorous standard. And so we went to DynaLIFE and we said, these are the results as we have. I mean, this is, we'd like to work with you for the next step. And their answer was, yes, great. And so, we're going to have to show analytic stability. We're going to have to, let's see your SOPs under quality management system. Let's see all these. And we're like, okay, let's have a conversation how we get there. And we've been working with the DynaLIFE team to help us get to those clinical standards to show future adoption and help with future adoption of the technology for patients in the real world.
Right on. That sounds fantastic. And David, can you tell us a little about your journey with being involved with the program as well?
Sure. At Metabolomic Technologies, we've developed an innovative new urine test for the early detection of colorectal cancer. So all that research was done out of the University of Alberta, and when we first approached DynaLIFE, it's kind of similar to Colin, we weren't quite as ready as we thought we were. Primarily, even in the platform that we were using was just not applicable, and this was actually pre-accelerator days, about a couple of years prior, we were looking at this technology from what's called a nuclear magnetic resonance instrument, which is a huge instrument that you can't fit in really any clinical laboratory. So we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and really design the test itself back to so that there's a customer fit. And that's kind of what we did. And then now that we've kind of engineered the product itself so there's a fit with the customer, now we're looking at really driving adoption. And that's where we've gone back to DynaLIFE for help.
Right on. And now with the program, like we talk a lot about, you guys provide a lot of mentorships. You do a lot of obviously having access to the lab and connections as well. Can you tell us, like, for Colin and David, had this program not been in existence, like where would you guys have gone? Like what kind of resources were available that was really missing to make this kind of stuff happen?
So if I can start, we'd probably still be in the academic environment doing the experiments that we think our customers would have wanted, and we probably would have wasted a lot of time in that environment. Being part of the accelerator, we not only had to create our SOPs for the test a little bit, but just getting them to help us with the data management. How are you going to get this information back to the patient?
Yeah.
Now we're set up through the accelerator to be able to do that much more quicker when we're actually ready for the real world. And you can't do that in an academic environment. So we would have had a lot of challenges and probably be a couple of years behind schedule.
So efficiency, time, obviously, and then money. The amount of money that you would have wasted trying to hunt and find would have just been, and then a delay of solutions to health problems that we're facing right now is just that much longer.
Well, I think one of the interesting components, having worked with a number of the organizations now, and it seems to ring true with every one, is also picking the target. Or picking the target application for the market. And I think the earlier that we were able to get involved, or we have been involved, it allowed these organizations to focus resources towards a very specific target application that actually has clinical value. It's something that it's worth us putting resources towards. And in David's case, it was the NMR magnet. In the case of Nanostics, it was the type of sample that they wanted to work from. The examples just go on. And I think for the ability for researchers and academics to actually be able to expose it to people who ultimately would be the people using their technology allows very, very strong insight into exactly how it would have to perform and where it fits. And often the perception of where it fits and the reality of where it fits could be quite different. And in almost every circumstance, there's been a retargeting of that as a result.
Gotcha. So more focus now.
For sure.
Cool. So now, last thing here, what about how do people get involved? How do we become a member? What are the qualifications?
Well, really what we're looking for is organizations. There's a couple things. Number one, do you have a relevant technology that's going to add value? There's lots of shiny objects in the world. And the challenge is making sure that we're focusing our resources around ones that we think truly will have an impact. So that's number one. So do you think it's actually going to have a true clinical impact? Number two is, are you ready? Have you done your homework? Are you at a place where you have a team, you have really an idea about the market you want to get into, and you're really at that stage where you're trying to make that last mile. You're trying to go those last steps, and that's something you realize you just can't do in the environment you're in. And then I think the third one, and the one that we've learned is the most critical, is are you actually open to feedback? Because that we have met people along the way who have spent 90% of the discussion defending why they did what they did versus listening to where they need to be successful. And that is a really important piece, is that you actually have a team that's receptive to understanding why they need to fit into the world instead of trying to explain why the world should fit.
Gotcha. Yeah, being coachable.
Being coachable. Yeah, and I know that it seems like a real basic thing, but you'd be surprised. That is one of our biggest criteria is, are you actually working with a group that wants to work with you?
Yeah. And those people are generally coming to you guys because you have the connections and the knowledge base to get, to the things that they can't answer themselves. So they need to, listen. So, yeah.
And sometimes those discussions are tough.
Right.
Because sometimes people have poured a lot of work into something that you look at it and go, you know, we need to...
The control freak.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
An entrepreneur, the control freak.
I want you to be successful, but we're going to have to make a change.
For
right?
sure.
And sometimes that's a tough conversation.
Definitely, absolutely. So I guess I said last thing on my last question, but I'm going to make this my last question. Always comes up every time, funding. You know, everyone's talking about money. We need more money. Now, I know you guys do a little bit of that kind of funding, again, through the qualification process. Can you kind of take us through a little bit of what that qualification process is for funding, where you guys fit in there? I know I've read on your site that you guys do connect funders in some cases if you have the ability to. Can you kind of take us through some of that process?
Yeah, really. I mean, we're not designed as a venture fund, right? It's not our role to take a stake in companies. That's not what we're doing. What we are willing to do is provide resources in kind. We're willing to provide, equipment and access to a lot of things. But our interest in working on a project, and I think it's a good question for the two gentlemen beside me, is does that provide a level of credibility that allows them to then go to the market and speak with other funders? Because when a real world organization is willing to commit its resources to a project, often then funders take that as a cue that this technology is relevant, it's viable, and there's a clear path and someone's watching it, right? In terms of development. And so I think that has opened up, my perception is that has opened up doors to other partner funders saying, well, DynaLIFE, if you're in, then we're in. And a lot of the project funding has been contingent on, getting through the milestones that we help lay out with the organizations. But, I think it would be valuable to hear the perspective of
Definitely.
So one thing I wanted to add was really in the funding, and it actually goes back to kind of a conversation earlier, is about the efficiency, right? So if we're to do the same project ourselves and really do it in an academic setting, and then we're ready to now give it to DynaLIFE to run, they would have to redo everything we did themselves. But if we do it together, and really that efficiency comes in, is that whoever spends the money, whether it's shared capital, whether it's our own capital, that we see that efficiency transferred, that we don't have to repeat what we just did, and because we're doing it right within the health system. And I think that's the important part about the funding and why doing it within the health system makes it that much more efficient. And then that's where you can attract then external funders to say, well, we don't have to do it again at a later point in time when we're really ready to go into the market.
Right.
So. Yeah, and continue with that, it really helps. So both David and I just came back from San Francisco trying to raise some money for our companies. And it really helps when you're looking at external funders that want to take a stake and invest in your company. And you can say, listen, we're working with a accredited clinical lab that services 2 million people in the province of Alberta, and our machines are running in there under strict quality control procedures. That goes a long way to an investor saying, now I really will put my money behind that because I know it's done properly and effectively.
Right.
And with the DynaLIFE Accelerator, we've accelerated that process faster than most companies would have the opportunity to.
Awesome. Credibility, foundation, those are big key aspects. People want to invest in something that they're fairly confident in. And from this program, it really sounds like you guys have kind of built that messaging that we're confident. Like you said, DynaLIFE has that credibility for that foundation of we're confident that this is legit, this is fruitful, this is it's going to be progressive and it's innovative and it's going to happen. And so then I see what you mean now by that and why investors would get behind that. So fantastic. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in and sharing this. This sounds like this is really the next step. Love to hear about collaboration, obviously, and seeing people working together, trying to keep people here and keep our investments here and our brains here, that brain power. So it's super fantastic to hear about this. Thank you for coming in and sharing us with your journey with us on what being a part of that accelerator program has been for you guys. And hopefully we'll be able to spread some more messaging, get more people kind of looking and knocking at your doorstep, and create more progress and some more change for the future.
Super. By Alberta for Alberta.
There you go. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
There you have it. If you'd like to learn more about the accelerator program, we have links in the description below. Thanks for watching.
what that's called.